It's Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. I'm trying to see how to preface this conversation. I'm in this, as far as what flies in this area, as far as patterned flags on the tops of the buildings, just for placement in the quantum realm. For a reality to be cohesive. That's what's been consistently throughout my time frame in this particular area on this particular island. This morning, I watched the program that they put up, CBS. I watched the 7 o'clock hour. I watched the 8 o'clock hour. And then there was this piece about the universe that was on this channel I found yesterday called Story Television. And the universe, it was season 6, episode 1. Yesterday I found this on the Story Television channel, this pattern appear of F-35, which they say is within this linguistical system for like a placement. Yesterday, in this particular storyboard of concept of if I was to structure a conversation and anchor myself in a reality with a different level of human that's had a totally different experience, exists in a parallel dimension, just not necessarily the reality and vocabulary that I exist within. Their exposure to different levels of speech and ways of doing things is different than what's going on in penal colony management on ground. So for that, there's a break in the reality, but I'm trying to build some kind of bridge between the two realities, depending on whatever, to have placement into where I am and how I've been hurt and what might be responsible, since on land management, I don't have a set of chain of people, but a chain of events happened, and I don't have a chain of command to report to or to speak to. So this makes my life incredibly difficult, because I know there are other people in the penal colony that do have a chain of command and they do have the correct channels in order to communicate effectively. So there's that. I found this person lives in a reality where this is his name, and he co-authored something called Space Wars, the First 6 Hours of World War III. Now, he speaks of a reality that already exists in a parallel dimension, but I have no crossover for. Like, I haven't met aviators that know his level of engineering, his level of science, his level of history, his level of experience and hobbies and whatever else it is that he filled up his human life with. But I know he exists somewhere in this parallel dimension. I say this because last night I was pulled into a local meeting by my father and someone that asked my father to come to what they refer to as a Christmas party. And they organize themselves under NAMI. Now, I went to this place, and It is like asking a completely sober person to go to an AA meeting. So I went to this National Alliance of Mentally Ill, and I listened to them and the way that they identify themselves, the vocabulary that they use. Again, these are like show business words. Also, it seems like penal colony management words, for which I don't agree with. And I am the one who has the letter on file within that flag system that gives me a higher priority on self-directing. I am not one of them. I went, I listened to the words that they spoke, I listened to how they identified themselves, I listened to how they promote their drugs, their synthetic drugs, how they indoctrinate one another, how they are enabling one another. And I also hear how the counselors and advocates work with them to coddle them and to almost codify their wanting to exist at this level. They talked about they get diagnosed and then they follow these paths of social work, which is really frightening. So then they can go and try to indoctrinate others into this universe of mental disease. Now, is there a case possibly for a subset of classification of human in management, repeat offenders, violent felons, and so on and so forth, that this language is needed for law and for order and law enforcement? I do believe there is. Inside of a metro city, high capacity, there perhaps is a need for it. Where I have a problem is when they cross over and try to place on me their understanding or their lack of understanding. I heard these stories of these people having these they refer to themselves manic episodes, all this other stuff. And I'm just like, I hear you. We're just not the same. We didn't have the same upbringing. You didn't grow up on a glen. I did. I have special letter. I have special power in that letter. I have a special purpose. And now as I walk after being hurt with ability to get to the relationship I needed and things happening, now I'm being harmed in like this guy's level of reality. And I need this guy's level of reality rather than this break in. There's so much that they've kept from my ability to know, like what a Vatican Council is and so on and so forth. So if penal colony management is working at a showbiz and like movie stars are the imposters, supposedly, and then you've got the like penal colony, like regular people. Got it. You've got showbiz with like sports stars and whatever. And then they've got reach into the penal colony management. That's where it gets frightening. So in CBS Mornings, E247, today is Tuesday, 12/13/2022. This is what they put on about fusion, Fusion. That's the level of conversation I'm comfortable having. A scholar wants to teach me about fusion, about the possibility of fusion in some abstract format. I would so gladly sit down and listen to the way they construct their whatever and completely be immersed in that moment. That's the reality I live in, and that's where my heart's desire is. So that's the level of conversation I want to be at. I do not want to be at an NAMI meeting. I don't want to be at an NA meeting, meaning Narcotics Anonymous. I don't want to have to be at AA, which is Alcohols Anonymous. Have I been to these meetings because some human has asked me to sit in on the meeting just to be in that moment and see how that level of human, what social services they're taking part in for whatever witness they needed because of my whatever letter that I have? Great. I've sat there. I was not harmed in that moment of witnessing what the humans on Long Island do in their off time to try to help themselves and what social services are available to them. These meetings were in Long Island. I would not engage in these kinds of meetings in the city. The city people frighten me. Just is. There's way too many of them, and I have no idea who or where they've come from and what they know. And the way that they're shifting chairs and so on and so forth, it's monumentally frightening. So this is the level of conversation I'm comfortable with. The NAMI, that was like a freebie. I went there, I heard you, I'm over it. I don't want to be asked again unless it's to use the witness as a witness what these humans have dragged me through while I've been here without an ability to find employment to protect myself and build my future into something that was not being trapped in rooms and having my children taken from me by penal colony employees that answer to a higher authority that have now interfered with my ability to raise my children and care for my children because they're on this presumptive showbiz schedule and vocabulary, thinking like they are something more important than they really are.
Revolutionary breakthrough in creating clean, essentially limitless energy. Later today, the Department of Energy and scientists from a federal nuclear weapons facility plan to announce a long-sought achievement that someday may lead to a massive source of carbon-free electricity.
However one needed to grow up in order to get to this level of conversation, that's where I should have been placed. So I could have had something respectable and something intelligent, and I could be his champion, and I could be his companion, and we could have had children together. And then the extra special child that I was to give birth to in birthing planet systems at this level of knowing things would have made complete sense. And then the penal colony conversation of I'd squash them like a bug if I could at this point for the amount of world of hurt they've thrown me into while taking my children away. And at Vatican Council, I assume they already know who all of these perpetrators are.
Luciano spoke to scientists who say this is a game changer in the effort to prevent climate change.
It's the holy grail of energy creation that some say could save humans from extinction. Nuclear fusion. It combines two hydrogen atoms, which then makes helium and a whole lot of energy. Scientists from the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California are expected to announce today that they've achieved a net energy gain for the first time in history.
Now, imagine them taking these scientists that have this legitimate job that they worked so hard for, and then just because they wanted to, they isolated them and then started berating them, telling them that they had this mental illness, they needed to be on lithium and all sorts of drugs, synthetic drugs, and pumping them and institutionalizing them without authority. But they've got some kind of judge system mixed in with the political crowd, mixed in with the imposter movie kid crowd, mixed in with all their personal relationship issues. And then it's like it's a recipe for disaster, but it's what's going on.
The day you get more energy out of it than you put in, sky is the limit.
Nuclear fusion is how stars like our sun generate power.
Yes!
And the news has astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson very excited.
We've known how to fuse atoms and generate energy. We just haven't been able to control it.
Right, that is their main modus operandi, isn't it? Trying to control the atom in the nuclear family. Don't think I don't get the overture in this parabolic. I mean, there's an infancy narrative that was to control the spin so we don't go into World War III in a nuclear catastrophe. But to hold me hostage with as like Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost, without the special son that I birthed and without being taken care of at any level is a problem. But to further that by putting me further in harm's way and by putting my son in further harm's way, he's being raised by strangers that have a mental defect. The same one who tried murdering me is who you have raising him. Mental defect.
Nuclear fusion technology has been around since the creation of the hydrogen bomb. But using that technology to harness energy has required decades of research.
They took 200 laser beams, some of the most powerful on the planet Earth, converged that energy down to a pellet the size of a BB. And just remember, fusion power has no nuclear waste to speak of, no meltdowns to worry about.
Current nuclear power plants use fission, which breaks apart atoms to create energy. Even though it's not burning fossil fuel, meltdowns like Chernobyl and Fukushima are evidence that nuclear fission can still harm humans and our environment.
This is a separate infancy narrative, just like Joseph, Mary, and Jesus, and Bethlehem, and the bright star. So is fusion. There is an infancy narrative because the public just doesn't need to know all the details. And then there's what's acceptable in large mass production if it must be spoken about. I don't understand why, when this is known, how anybody hasn't come championed for me and brought me to a platform or a level where I can live quietly and carefully within the subset that I need to be within. Here, in this penal colony, it's like totally exposed to the whims of whatever blows through. And I have no idea how they're structured. Now here's another infancy narrative.
Hit and run theory face a forensic dilemma. If the collision happened, why didn't it leave a visible scar on the surface?
If, then, those are the conversations I like to partake in scientific method and scientific theory. What I do not like partaking in is this NAMI, this NA, or this AA, and their crowd. It's the dregs of society. Listen, they exist at that level, which is fine. It's just not my lifestyle. It's not my lifestyle. It's not where I want to be, but it's where they forced my life to go in. I don't know who's driving the crazy train. I don't. Then they talk about Saturn and the ice rings, which I can only attribute that infancy narrative to whatever was going on Cold War. The Cold War. Is that the Frio War, the T.O. Frio, the Uncle Cold War? That I was never supposed to be headed in that direction? The man's name is T-E-O, and then it's F-R-I-O. In Latin America. Hispanic. It means Uncle Cold. If you knew in the 1980s that's what Cold War was going to lead, with me dragged through, raked over the coals, that's premeditated social murder. I mean, my kid's future, I have a national security rep that was there the day that this picture was taken, holding the Prince of Peace right next to me. They've been there. They sent an escalator representative, which is how I refer to him, because it's such an off, weird way of mentioning the fact that it's someone from Cosmic Nursery, because we have the same astrological date on a very important machine in the public doesn't know.
Environment of Mercury being so hot due to fluctuations in the solar output that the entire planet actually vaporized. The rocky mantle actually became rock vapor. And then the solar wind blew that rock vapor away out into space.
Now, these are people who live in infancy narratives of a way of communicating and a way of gathering their highlights, their insight, their whatever around these things that carry forward a message for something that happens in a council far, far away that nobody really sees or hears from or even knows about, but exists and then influences things and plans things far into the future and can alter the balance not only of power, but future. And whatever your landscape's going to be like, whatever's next, what's next in mathematics and science, they influence that. So it's incredibly imperative and important.
So that's another possible explanation for why the core survived, because it was...
But now this gentleman was able to study this fanciful level of astrophysics and was exposed to that. I didn't even have the word astrophysics as a child growing up. I mean, like, chase something, great. I'd love to chase it. I just don't know what words even in English, there's no words. They never structured anything for me to follow along in order to even reach out and get to a level to even protect myself or to get to where I needed to be.
Made of...
Hoping to unlock the mysteries of its turbulent past.
Now this I hear, the turbulent
The
past.
innermost planet that took a beating. Today, Saturn's spectacular rings rotate in calm serenity. But they owe their beauty to a makeover of the most violent kind, over 4 billion years ago.
There's that evil number 4, Luke, at 4 UC. This violent takeover. Did that come up, just curious, in the Cold War with Frio? Since I got shoved into some disgusting situation with a TO Frio, like 22 years in the future.
Number 9 on our countdown of planetary catastrophes, Saturn's shattered moon.
Although Saturn's rings are one of the most noticeable things in the solar system, they've also been one of the big mysteries of the solar system. How long ago did they form? How did they form?
Now, does that coincide with the infancy narratives of Mary, Joseph, and the star in this reality in New York when I arrived? I mean, again, I know there's a fight over, we don't believe in the Old Testament, we don't believe in the New Testament. There's a whole lot of human stuff that goes on along the way, which is why time is not on their side. If it dilates, it becomes even more disastrous, especially since I produced the body. I brought field theory into reality by producing the body that then legitimized the theory, which means that everything, if it goes off course, was premeditated to try to hurt me. Strengthens someone's case somewhere. I just don't know who or how to fix my day-to-day situation, since now my day-to-day situation is they came after me and took my children, gave them to the murderer or the attempted murderer, and now I'm here, and they've already locked me in an institution, tried to drug me. I won't go for any of it. I don't believe in them. And I know I had a different beginning and a different reality. And I see how they structure the carry forward in someone still has family values that they need to promote in whatever that means. Or for whatever
And
that's
perhaps
worth.
most puzzling of all, why are Saturn's iconic rings mostly made of ice? 33 million billion tons of it.
And that's the Oort cloud, after the problem with Romer to Tiafrio. It's a world of hurt and a world of fractals, like little ice shatters around Saturn now, which I don't know if that links back to Hofstra in 1998 when Nicklaus was there, when Ian was also there, and when we were driving around in the Saturn. Again, all of these details in intelligent design that then led to a crazy donkey, which threw me into now Frio, which is a problem.
Sculptor Roland Hernandez has recreated Saturn and one of its icy moons to help us visualize a new theory. How a lunar catastrophe could have given birth to Saturn's rings.
We have a beautiful 2-foot version of Saturn, and we also have its wonderful moon made out of ice.
Wow, it's just beautiful. It looks a little strange, though. It doesn't look like the Saturn that we know because it doesn't have any rings. But that's why we're here, because we want to take ice off the surface of this moon and create rings around Saturn.
Many scientists now believe an ancient ice-covered moon.
Guillermo del Toro made a movie, Handcrafted. Is this like they make ice rings here, they make branches off of Pinocchio's nose with all the lies. Again, I see that there's a collective consciousness for the cognitively dissident. I'm just wondering why I'm being harmed still, and nobody's been able to win over my favor and figure out how to get me to a level of existence that I deserve as the mother of the Prince of Peace, for which they have infancy narratives on. Now, in the local area, one thing that I've done for my children that they can actively comment on if asked, there's a restaurant by the name of IHOP, IHOP. It's called the International House of Pancakes. When I was raising them and I couldn't take them out to a restaurant while I was working, every once in a while we'd have, like, every Thursday was Mommy Alex Day. And I took off and it was just him and I. But there would be dinners because the other two children were in school during the day when I was alone with Alex. And I would have breakfast for dinner. That was a signal to them that we were breaking the social structure of their childhood. And we were just shaking it up a little bit in a crazy having breakfast for dinner. Oh, Mom's so crazy. Yeah, right, sure. In the structured manner that they lived, because I had 3 of them and I was outnumbered, breakfast for dinner was like a highlight that happened enough that they remember it. And it was special when it happened. For the little things I could do that didn't cost me anything, but would scar them in a good way to have a memory etched into their childhood. but in a positive light for psychology purposes. Just so this way it wasn't just like drone work. So there's that. Later on, after they were taken from me, on the rare few visits that I've had with them, it's usually taken place in IHOP. It's not necessarily for breakfast, but sometimes we will shake it up and have breakfast for dinner even still. That's kind of our thing. On the news today on CBS, I see that somebody took that concept, whether it was intentional or not, I'm not clear. But by the Universal Intelligent Design, it happens to be a story that they put on this morning. And they closed down an IHOP for people who are having trouble, like food insecurities. And there's a charity that is inviting these people in and feeding them. So I'm going to put that on for some kind of neural network that exists that might not always be explainable. Because Hugh Jackman, this morning on the CBS episode, came out with a movie called The Sun, the S-O-N. Again, I'm not commenting.
Restaurant has been taken up by someone in need.
Everyone is going through something. And if I have the opportunity to spread some kind of happiness or joy to someone else, I think it's worth it.
Adina closed her IHOP in Irvington to regular customers for the night, and instead her staff cooked up a hot meal for underprivileged families. Breakfast for dinner. For the kids, it's a chance to enjoy something different. For their parents, a chance to feel seen.
It gives us a fear that someone out here actually cares about the community and cares about us as well. I think it's important for the community to learn with all that's going on in the world to come together.
Many women in this room were once incarcerated. Pat McNeil was locked up 38 years ago. Despite her college education, her credentials, she's been struggling since COVID to find work.
Will they welcome you with open arms when they see your background? That's the question.
And while breakfast might not help change that, the support does matter.
A lot of these people don't know each other. Some don't have family. So letting them know that today we're coming together in Irvington to give back and to be a part of the community family, it means a lot to a lot of people.
Hosting an event like this is also a chance for Adina to get her own daughter involved in giving back.
Like how I get to see like people smile like on their face and then they look so happy. That's my favorite part. Whatever I miss tonight in revenue is gonna come back to me.
A reminder that some things are more important than money. In Irvington, Kevin Rincon, CBS 2 News.
It is nice.
So, in my situation, this whole like thought of detention or a timeout, merits and demerits is a real problem, considering there's no monetary compensation. I see today there's something going on with cryptocurrency and the Sam Freed, and he got locked up again. He only has paper. I not only have infancy narrative, but I produced a body. So what's real and what is economically running off on like fumes, there's a big difference. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.